Living within the Marvel Cinematic Universe might seem like a cool idea at first glance. Imagine waking up in a place where superheroes are real. That would be so awesome. But when you think about it for longer than about 10-ish seconds, suddenly living there starts to sound really horrible. And I'm not just saying that because you'd have to deal with the threat of an alien invasion or something crazy like that every other day or so, but because the MCU is made up of some of the most dangerous locales ever. Don't believe me? How about I go ahead and rank a few of them so that you can see just how horrifically terrible some of them can be. Without any further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right into it. On the surface, the town of Westview looks like just your run-of-the-mill, medium-sized town in New Jersey. Nothing all that special or dangerous about it. And for most of its history, that has been the case. That is, however, until Wanda Maximoff moved into town and turned it into her own little slice of hell. As if living in the suburbs wasn't bad enough already, being mind-controlled into living out Wanda's odd sitcom fantasies makes it borderline unbearable. That being said, living in Westview isn't exactly deadly. Sure, if you go there, you might have to undergo some light torture and trauma, but no one actually dies because of what's going on there, which is why it's at the very bottom of this list. Still though, not a place that I would really choose to go willingly. Titan used to be a peaceful, lush world. Inhabited by an advanced race of people, the planet seemed like a pretty chill place to call home. That is, until overpopulation started to take hold. This led to multiple wars and conflicts amongst the people who lived there, which caused the planet to become completely uninhabitable and shifted 8 degrees off of its axis. Now, it's nothing more than a barren, desolate world where no life can exist. And as if that wasn't bad enough, during his battle with the Avengers, Thanos wound up shattering its moon and used it as a weapon against the heroes. And who knows what kind of effects that could have on the planet moving forward. Probably just made it even more unlivable. So yeah, maybe don't go to Titan if you want to relax and not starve. Definitely not a good vacation spot. Take a second to think of the classic image of a seedy, disgusting city overrun by crime and devoid of all justice. Now, take that image and stretch it over an entire planet and put an eccentric tyrant as the leader of it. And you've got a pretty basic understanding of why Sakaar is such a terrible place to be. Odds are, if you live here, you are either a slave, who will probably ultimately be forced to fight in the Grandmaster's arena, a slave trader, or someone who just spends their life scavenging for scraps in order to get by. Doesn't help either that the entire world is just absolutely covered in trash, deposited there by wormholes that dot the surface of the planet. At least all of the junk ships will give you a place to hide once the Grandmaster decides it's time for you to not be alive anymore and sends his goons after you. Listen, if you're in the Red Room facility, that means only one of a small handful of possibilities. 1, you work for an evil organization that is okay with the idea of utilizing brainwashed child soldiers. In which case, how do you sleep at night? 2nd, there's a chance that you are one of said brainwashed child soldiers, which honestly is something so horrific sounding that I honestly think I'd personally rather be dead than have to go through that. Or there is a chance that you're a prisoner, in which case you have a lot of torture and interrogation to look forward to before you are more than likely ultimately taken out when you are of no more use to the Red Room. Basically what I'm saying is, it's a pretty horrible and cold place to find yourself. Luckily, doesn't really exist anymore, as Black Widow and crew blew it up at the end of her solo film, so there is that. Also, it just doesn't exist because it's not real anyways. So, take comfort in that. Look at Vormir and just try to tell me that this remote, barren wasteland isn't a rough spot to find yourself. For at least half of the people who step foot on this planet, it winds up being their final resting place, due to the fact that in order to claim the Soul Stone, one must first give up that which they love the most. So, it's a planet that's entire gimmick and reason for being there at all requires a major sacrifice. That's bad enough as is, but when you couple that with the fact that this sacrifice leaves the person's soul trapped here for all eternity, with absolutely no hope of bringing them back, even with the full power of the Infinity Stones, and suddenly, this is about as bad as it gets. And I mean, even if you manage to not be the one sacrificed for a glowing orange rock, the only person that you have to talk to on the entire planet is an old German dude with a bad complexion who talks like he has only had a thesaurus to read for the past 80 or so years. That alone would be enough to make me want to yeet myself off that cliff. You know, it's bad enough when you visit a place where every living thing on the surface wants to see you turned into a pile of bones, but what about when you go somewhere where the planet itself wants you dead? Well, that's what happens when you step foot on Ego, the living planet. Sure, he might have an avatar that looks like Kurt Russell, and yeah, he might be really charming, but once you discover his caves filled with the bones of his own children who failed to live up to his godly requirements, suddenly, it's not such a kosher place to be. Making things worse is the fact that, because the planet itself is Ego, he has control over everything in the environment, so there's literally nowhere you can run to escape his grasp. It took the combined effort of the Guardians of the Galaxy, including a fully powered up Star-Lord, in order to stop him. What good would just a normal person do against such unstoppable rage? Answer: not a lot. Don't go to Ego. If you are one of the unlucky few who wind up on the wrong side of the TVA, you could find yourself visiting the Void. Located at the end of time itself, the Void is a vast, open world consisting of pretty much nothing but elements sent there by the Time Variance Authority. Making things worse is the presence of roaming gangs, including at least one led by a deranged Loki variant, who has no qualms about taking out pretty much anyone who gets in their way for basically no reason. Oh, and there is the fact that the entire world is constantly under threat by a giant cloud-like entity that consumes anything and everything that it can find, swallowing it up and removing it from existence. Yeah, not a great thing to have to encounter. And seemingly the only way to escape this place is via technology from the TVA itself, which, if you find yourself there in the first place, you probably can't count on them ever coming to help you. Or, you could try to make it past the giant death cloud and find yourself at the end of time, facing down Kang himself, which is probably not much better now that I think about it. Muspelheim is about as close to literal hell that we will ever see within the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Home to fire demons under the control of Surtur, the being prophesied to bring about Ragnarok and destroy Asgard, this place is entirely made up of volcanoes and lava and fire. It's the kind of place that only the most powerful Asgardians are even capable of stepping foot, let alone having any hope of surviving. Provided that you don't immediately burn to death upon first arriving, the best you could look forward to is being eaten by a fire dragon, as the alternative is being captured and tortured by Surtur, which I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The Quantum Realm is about as inhospitable of a place as you can possibly imagine. Existing outside of the normal universe, this is a place where even the Infinity Stones don't work properly. It's somewhere where time and space are completely irrelevant. On top of that, deadly radiation is in such abundance here that no one can survive without some kind of advanced suit or some sort of magical protection. Which I guess is kinda handy, since it takes advanced technology or sorcery to even get there in the first place. Also, you'd have to imagine that it's the kind of thing where if you step in the wrong spot, you might wind up like 200 years in the past or something. Which might sound kinda cool until you think about how life was 200 years ago, and suddenly, it's not so good. Oh wow, big shocker. The place called the Dark Dimension isn't a great place to go visit. Who could have possibly seen that coming? Even if you can look past the fact that it is a shapeless hellscape where the laws of physics are merely a suggestion at best, there is still the fact that it is ruled over by Dormammu, an ancient being who possesses powers beyond the comprehension of mortal men. He's someone who is so powerful that even the Ancient One is fearful of him, despite the fact that she draws power from his realm in order to maintain her long life. But on top of being super powerful, Dormammu also appears to be omnipresent within the Dark Dimension. So even if you did decide to venture there for whatever reason, it wouldn't be long before you'd find yourself face to face with him. And odds are you wouldn't have a time stone to help you out there. So that conversation probably wouldn't go super well. Assuming, of course, that he doesn't just vaporize you immediately without even bothering to talk to you. Someplace where you could be wiped from existence as soon as you even step foot into it? Yeah, that is definitely the most dangerous spot in the MCU. Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video and I want to know what you think. Which of these locations would you like to visit despite the danger? Would you include any that I didn't? Let me know in the comments down below or shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching and be sure to subscribe to CBR for even more great videos just like this in the future.